This video is a film study look at Jamal Adams and his preseason play against the Seattle Seahawks. Adams, of course, is the veteran who's trying to resurrect or prolong his career, if you will, while reuniting with Pete Carroll, the former head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Adams is undergoing a positional change as well, and Carroll and Adams have been upfront about that he's moving to inside linebacker, and I agree. That's where he's been deployed often in this first game against the Seahawks, and I'll show you about 12 cut-ups from that game. However, there's some crossover, there's some carryover from his former position as a nickel safety who generally plays to the field and where he's going to be aligned now. It looks like he's going to be a backup will linebacker. The will linebacker generally aligns to the boundary. If you're not aware, the ball in pretty much all levels of football spends the majority of the time on either the right or the left hash. Very rarely is it spotted in the middle of the field. Is he quick enough? Does he have enough burst? Of course, there's going to be people who talk about coverage. I'm not a Jamal Adams fan, to be honest with you. I really started paying attention to him a little bit last year when he signed with the Detroit Lions. I do some content for the Lions along with being a Ravens content creator and a Ravens fan. And so watched a little bit of Jamal Adams film, was kind of rooting for him to be able to make some plays and contribute. He did not do so in Detroit, despite all the injuries that they suffered there. It looks like he's going to be used as an inside linebacker, hybrid dime linebacker, a guy who, if he can fulfill that role in certain spots against certain positional groups, could offer tremendous versatility to this defense in Las Vegas. Let's get some of the film started here. In certain cases, he's not involved with the play at all. We're just showing you his deployment, the fact that he is, yes, being utilized as an inside linebacker. He's playing to the field here, so technically that's the mic. The ball is on the right hash, so the inside linebacker to the bottom side of our screen, the right-hand side of the defense would be considered the mic, and the inside linebacker to the left, generally considered the will. But sometimes people line up off the tight end. Sometimes they line up field and boundary. Most teams do that, especially against 11 personnel. Not involved in the read at all here. I do wonder how much he's participating in nickel drills and how much he's participating in inside linebacker drills. He does have the same reaction pretty much from a step forward technique as the other inside linebacker. I think it's Tommy Eichenberg. The next snap that I have for you here, this is still in the first quarter. In fact, it's a 2nd and 7. You can see he's moved over to the nickel position. It's possibly because they're 12 personnel group on a 2nd and long. Again, not involved in the play necessarily here. If you ask me, it's a cover 3. I do want to point out the difference in how the corners play this. You may have a half field call that essentially turns this into a match or man coverage to the top side, whereas everything down here where Adams is located ends up being a hard-coded cover 3. And that could be why this particular short route, which I think is by Torrey Horton, is being covered up by the boundary corner, while this short route here, look at all the space between that essentially snag concept and the corner to the field. Adams leaves some space between him and the hook to curl dropper, and that's where the ball is completed. I kind of reject a lot of times when players are considered the target of certain pass concepts, especially situations like this where the quarterback looks to the side and the corner covers it up well, so he comes back to the opposite side. It's a zone defense. This guy, Bobo, curls in behind Jamal Adams and fits in the window on a 2nd and 7, where the corner is really far off. Like I said, it's a cover 3, but we're out here guarding grass, in my opinion. We could probably be a little bit more connected to it. Doesn't necessarily have to be as tight a coverage as to the boundary, because oftentimes teams in pretty much every coverage, but especially a cover 3, play things differently into the boundary than they do to the field. One more time, he's at nickel here. This is a 1st and 10. This is going to be a drop to a cover 3. Now, this one ends up being incomplete to Horton. There's a point in time in the middle of this play where you can kind of see Jamal Adams thinking, oh, please, throw this ball out into the flats, right? Cover 3, quarter, half. People are going to call it different things, but you've got a corner here who's going to drop out into the flats, and then Adams to the other side. So I called it a cover 3 a moment ago. Really, I'd call it quarter, half, or possibly cover 6, where this is a half-field defender. But to me, these don't look like quarter and quarter. So sometimes cover 3, quarter, half can look almost synonymous. The difference is this is a corner playing the flats, and this is a strong safety nickel defender in the case of Adams. He covers it up well, so Locke doesn't go there and is flushed or forced out of the left-hand side of the offensive pocket. Right-hand side for the defense ends up being incomplete. This is the position that Jamal Adams has normally played, curl flat defender as a nickel defender to the field. Transitioning or moving him to will linebacker into the boundary does a lot of things, opens up different coverage opportunities for the Raiders and different blitzes as well. Nickel defender one more time. Kind of a little bit interesting here in that he's literally calling for the motion man to come over. I don't think he's signaling to his teammates. I think he's being a little bit of a line stepper here and basically saying, hey, I know you're going to motion on this play. I have tremendous awareness as a veteran defender. And lo and behold, here comes the blitz, and Adams attacks it, ends up one-on-one with a running back in pass pro, defeats that, but is unable to track down Drew Lock. And you can see the last two plays, he's definitely looking for opportunities to make an impact. I think his pursuit displays someone who wants to hold on to their spot into the game or wants to regain it, I guess. Is he going to start for this Raiders team? I don't think so, right? I mean, Jermaine Pratt, if you're unaware, I did a film study video of Jermaine Pratt when he signed with the Raiders. Tremendous football player, very underrated, smart, as a will linebacker, playing into the boundary, which to me is what it looks like Jamal Adams would be deployed as. So best case scenario, he's Jermaine Pratt's backup. Well, Jermaine Pratt is he's very tough. And he's reliable. He plays football pretty much every week and plays pretty much every snap. So how much will they need Adams? I'm not sure that he'll be their baseline nickel defender in a 4-2-5 set. Essentially, he's fighting for a spot on a team where he doesn't have a guaranteed position at all. And in fact, with the money they paid for Jermaine Pratt and his capability, I would say Pratt looks like a guy that, as I said before, is going to be on the field pretty much every single play. I do like the effort from Adams, really leaving everything out on the field that he can in possibly his last go-around in an NFL uniform. 2nd and 10, this is going to be a run concept. I think this is one of the better fits or examples that you get for Adams as an inside linebacker. He is lined up to the boundary, so even though the two tight ends are over here, would still generally refer to this as a will linebacker, but it looks like at times he's technically the Mike if you're lining up off the tight ends. If you're lining up off the tight ends, Mike normally goes there. Will generally goes to the weak side or opposite of the tight end. If you're lining up field and boundary, normally the Mike is to the field, the Will is to the boundary. In this alignment, and given their experience at inside linebacker and their coverage abilities, I would clearly say it looks like to me Eichenberg is a Mike type and Jamal Adams is a Will archetype. There's the concept that you get is zone lead, essentially, or lead zone. All the offensive linemen working to their left, the bottom side of our screen, fullback, tailback. So this is full flow. Everybody's moving that way, so Adams is gone. Bradford, the right guard for the Seahawks, is unable to take him over. You can see a little bit of a strike here by Adams and goes underneath. He seems to be a guy that's going to go underneath of things and not over the top. So you would want him as your backside inside linebacker on run concepts. You can't predetermine that. And man, I mean, in this day and age, there is just a relative shit ton of plays run into the boundary by all types of offenses. I happen to have a lot of experience the last couple of years trying to break down and analyze offenses like Todd Monken in Baltimore and then Ben Johnson in Detroit. Now he's moved on to Chicago. And those guys attack the boundary in some cases more so than they run plays to the field. This one in particular happens to go to the field, really sets up nicely for what you would like to see out of Jamal Adams if he does make the team, A, and then B, if he happens to be on the field. Same play, Bradford, the right guard, illustrated by the blue line, trying to get up to Adams and seal him off. Fullback, tailback tandem are both going to our left on the screen. The defense is right for the Raiders. So full flow, like I said, meaning everyone is flowing in that direction. Gets over the top of the guard. Really nice fit tackle. You can see he's super excited. I think maybe 3 tackles in the game. I'll show you another one. It was a little bit of a gimme later on from an inside linebacker standpoint. Very similar setup. Adams is to the boundary initially, along with the 2 tight ends. So call them whatever you want. Mike, if you're lining up off the tight end. Will, if you're lining up field and boundary. 22 personnel for the Seahawks. And there's Adams. It's going to be a run flow to him this time. So when I say he goes underneath the stuff, this is what I'm talking about. You got an immediate climb by the center because they're asking the left guard, Gray Zabel, to overtake that nose tackle. So the center is moving up immediately. A slight chip on the nose, and Adams goes underneath. And so if you're doing this, oftentimes the front side guy's going underneath of something, which I didn't really teach that much of. Then the backside guy's fast flow. He's moving over the top because presumably no one's going to be able to climb up to him just from a math standpoint. I don't think this is the way to do this all the time. I'm not saying that it can't get done. I don't think this is the way they're teaching it. Adams, just with his relative inexperience as an inside linebacker, this may be something that they talked about. Based upon what I know and what I've taught before, we will be trying to stab that, climb over the top, and condense that hole here such that the backside inside linebacker could fit behind us. Very similar to what just happened on the previous play. Hopefully I described that in a way that makes sense. I'm not saying Jamal Adams can't play inside linebacker. I'm just saying in this particular case, he goes underneath in a way that looks somewhat irregular compared to how most inside linebackers would react. The touchdown run by Halani, one of the backup running backs for the Seahawks. 3rd and 1 here. Adams at inside linebacker. It's a power concept. So the design of this is that everybody on the front side, the left side of the Seahawks offensive line, is down blocking. So a down block means that you're trying to take your man and block them that way towards the top of the screen, such that the kick out block by the fullback and then the wrap by the backside guard, it's Bradford, that's illustrated by the yellow line, can essentially lead the running back through the hole. Adams gets caught up in all that wash. So does everybody else, for that matter. They all get caught up in here. Adams and Eichenberg, they all get caught up in here. You can see the wall that's created, and then the kick-out block by the fullback here is supposed to have the running back underneath of that kick-out block, tucked up against the wall, and then downhill on a power concept. And only this time, he bounces it outside to an unblocked corner. You can see, now that I got rid of all the drawing that I had on the screen, you can see the wall that's been built. I'm not saying it's a poor read. Sometimes coaches will tell these guys things, and announcers, analysts like myself will say, you shouldn't bounce power. Well, depending on who the corner is that's out there may be a reason for it. I don't know anything about that corner out there. I'm not saying that's the rationale. My point is, everything isn't so hard-coded and always so black and white. There's times where a player, in this case a running back, is told to do a certain thing, and in this case it certainly worked out for the Seahawks. Touchdown, 24 yards, I think, after it was reviewed. Last play that I'll show you, once again, we have Adams at inside linebacker in an 11 personnel group. I would say this is where you're going to see him, with the ball on the right hash for the offense, Mike linebacker to the field in the case of Eichenberg, and then Will linebacker to the boundary in the case of Adams. Hope I explained all that in a way that makes sense. The Raiders may actually be using different terminology, right? They may not use Mike and Will in the same way that I'm describing it. The point is that you're talking about a weak side inside linebacker, but technically here he's lined up to the tight end. If you don't know it as well, the tight end almost always is lined up to the boundary in the NFL out of an 11 personnel group. Run concept, O-line working to the top side. I do like Adams' ability to stay square, super athletic, obviously compared to most human beings. At the NFL level, how athletic is he compared to starting caliber inside linebackers? Probably not as strong, right? Probably not as technical and consistent in his reactions. I think 11 personnel, Will into the boundary, will probably be the usage point that you'll see the most if moving forward in the preseason, number one. And then number two is if he's able to actually get on this football team and be active every week. Essentially on that last play, even though I called him a Will linebacker, because of his previous experience as a safety, what he ends up being is a dime linebacker. I suspect that that's one of the reasons why, one of the multiple reasons, at least two that I'm aware of, that Carroll would have asked him to come in and move to inside linebacker. Their previous relationship, things didn't work out in Seattle. Obviously, huge contract. Seattle gave up a lot to acquire him, I believe from a production and statistical standpoint. Clearly, he didn't impact the Seahawks as much as they would have liked. Carroll clearly thinks high enough of him to bring him in. At this point, Jamal Adams has made a shit ton of money, doesn't really need money. It appears to me as if he's somebody that just wants to stick around in the game as long as he possibly can. From the standpoint of a hybrid inside linebacker / dime linebacker, I'm referring to him as a dime linebacker because of his background as a safety. I'm interested in that. Most Will linebackers are more athletic than the Mike. That sounds a little backwards, right? Because they're lined up to the boundary and the Mike is lined up to the field. Thinking about guys like Patrick Queen, Jermaine Pratt, in fact. Quick, they can cover, still very good against the run, can deal with running backs out in space, and occasionally are tasked with guarding tight ends. I'm not sure what your perspective is on Jamal Adams, what your background is. You might be a Lions fan, a Ravens fan checking this out, maybe a former Jets fan or a former fan of his when he was with the Jets, excuse me, or perhaps a Raiders fan. If you are a Raiders fan, I did a film study on Jermaine Pratt, I think 6 weeks ago or whenever he signed. It might have been longer ago than that. The summer kind of went by quickly and slowly at the same time in terms of NFL. I think it's an interesting situation that Jamal Adams is bringing. He seemed to play well to me against the Seahawks. I didn't show you every single play. I, of course, omitted some so that this video didn't end up in the 25-minute mark on one player. I'm interested to see how things progress in the ensuing preseason games. Let me know what your assessment or eval is of Jamal Adams' play against the Seahawks. The reports that are coming out of Raiders training camp, I have zero knowledge of because I just don't have time to pay attention to those things. I just evaluate the film. There's some positives and negatives to solely focusing on the film. In my opinion, he looks like he's training well, taking it incredibly seriously, and trying to get every second that he possibly can on the field to put some good film out there so Carroll and the coaching staff will retain him when it comes time to cut down to the solo 53. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Raiders fans or football fans in general might enjoy this video, please consider grabbing a link to it, sharing it out on social media. Like I said, the only Raiders-related content that I've put out recently is a Jermaine Pratt film study that I'll link up in the description. Appreciate you guys' time.